Hi, this is Caius Tenchi, and I'm the director of the Toronto Motorcycle Film Festival. Thank you so much for joining us on this special Q&A discussion. We've got the team from The Desert Said Dance, which had its world premiere at Toronto Motorcycle Film Festival just this past weekend. As leading up to the film festival, obviously, I've seen this movie a number of times, and I was very excited and looking forward to seeing it on a big screen in the theater, and it did not disappoint. It really lived up to all its cinematic glory, and I'm very excited to be talking with the team behind the movie. Let me bring them online, and we can have a wonderful discussion together. Okay, welcome everybody. So going clockwise, we've got Forrest Minchinton, who is one of the producers and obviously a racer, if you've seen the movie, racer in the film. Then we've got Harrison Mark, one of the producers as well from the movie. Below Harrison, we've got Lincoln Caplice, who's the director. And just over to his right, underneath me, is Lawrence Hacking. So Lawrence is not in the movie, but Lawrence is a Baja 1000 Dakar finisher, amongst other things, and he was a member of our judging panel a couple of years ago, and I thought it would be wonderful to have him join us on this call. Thank you all so much for agreeing to take part. Forrest is in California. Harrison and Lincoln are in Sydney, so we've got really separate time zones over here. Before we jump into the discussion, let me just say again a couple of things. One, thank you for sharing this movie with us and allowing us to have its world premiere. It was a real treat. Two, as I had said, seeing it on the big screen was a treat for me. I've seen it a couple of times on my TV at home, during the selection process, leading up to when we finalized the list of films and so on, and even us screening it in the theater. And I was really looking forward to seeing it on the big screen. There's obviously a difference between seeing something at home, even if you've got a proper setup at home, and seeing it in the theater. And it did not disappoint. It was truly wonderful. Like, it was full of action. The editing, the colors on this movie, whoever your colorist was, just fantastic. Like, you could have hit pause and just stared at any one of those frames, because it was, I know it sounds like I'm gushing here, but truly it is highly cinematic, very picturesque. Soundtrack was amazing, and the story was great. I love, Lincoln, how you were able to weave these separate stories from different people together, and eventually, them coming together towards this one goal of the Baja 1000. So that's enough for me talking. Why don't we start with you, Lincoln? Welcome. And,
hey, how you doing?
Again, thank you so much for producing this film. Let me ask you a question. Tell us a little bit about the genesis of how this film came together, where the idea of it came from. Did the team approach you saying that, hey, they want to compete in the Baja and, let's film it, or how did that happen?
Sure. First of all, I'll just say thanks so much for screening the film. It's amazing to see people watching it in a cinema. It's been relatively trying times for that sort of stuff across the world, and even myself haven't seen it too many times in a big setting like that. So it's amazing to hear firsthand feedback, to hear how great it plays out like that. Shout out to Fergus Rotherham, who was the colorist on the film and did an amazing job, and also Andrew Goff, who is the director of photography and spent countless hours tweaking and prepping and shooting to make the film as visual as it possibly can be. Just as a side note, I think that was a strong goal going into the film between us all, is to really attack it with a very cinematic eye, choosing certain lenses over others to try and make sure that was really the case. In terms of the inception of the film, I actually think that Forrest and Harry have a better understanding of it. But from my point of view, I'd worked with Forrest previously on a film that was made by a motorcycle company Forrest rides for, Deus Ex Machina. So we worked together before on that, and he knew I had edited that film, and Harry obviously works with Forrest around the world shooting photographs and producing trips with him. So I'll let them tell about whether, I mean, it's been Forrest's dream to race the Baja 1000 for a very young age, so I think he should talk about that. But they came to me after coming up with the idea of entering and filming the Baja 1000 to edit, and I was very much keen to direct the film, and at that point probably edit as well. But as we went through it, I thought it was a much more mammoth task than I thought. So we got Lucas Vasquez on to edit that as well. But yeah, maybe Forrest and Harry, if you guys want to talk about like the initial inception of that and how it came about, I think it's probably.
Yeah, I think it was sort of a very serendipitous encounter with someone who's become a friend, but it was the man who helped us bring this project together. His name's Jesse Stanley, and long story short, Harry and I got an opportunity to go to South Africa and ride adventure bikes around the country, and I brought along my friend Jesse, and over a couple of beers in the middle of a safari game park in the middle of South Africa, we came up with this idea to go race the Baja 1000 and make a film about it. And it was one of those things where it was sort of something said by the campfire after a long day of riding, and it was sort of a dream scenario that we thought was just a little, was the beer talking. But a few weeks later, after returning home, to California, Harry and I were living together at the time here in California, and Jesse gave us a call and said, "Hey, let's do it." I was serious, and so for us, it was like both as filmmakers and as myself as a rider, as a racing enthusiast, it was a dream come true, and it was one of those kind of magical times in life where you never expect, but yeah, man, what a journey it was, and we're so grateful to him and stoked to be here talking about it.
Harry, in our email exchanges, you had mentioned, if I remember correctly, that you've been thinking about this for a very long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, tell us about that.
For sure. I mean, both Forrest and I spent a lot of time in Baja doing on other projects. Forrest a lot more than I, but I'm really close to Forrest and know that it had been a lifelong dream of his to enter the race, and we've both obviously seen all the films that everyone I'm sure has seen, Dust to Glory, etc. And kind of, I'd always thought that it'd be interesting to show this beautiful, we're in Baja, seeing this beautiful landscape and seeing these real human stories, and kind of wanted to take an approach to making a film, because there have been films made on the Baja 1000 before, and great films at that, but we wanted to take a different spin on it and try and show it and tell it through the human story a little bit more, in a bit more sort of the cinematic sort of route, which I think we achieved in the film. But it's something that Forrest and I had chatted about and spoken about at length for a long time, and even for Forrest getting the opportunity to enter the race is a big thing in itself. And I think having the opportunity to do both of those at the same time through this, and with the help of Jesse and everything else, it was a dream come true.
We talked a lot about it at the beginning. It was almost 8 or 9 months kind of leading up to flying to Mexico. But we talked a lot about celebrating a couple of things in it is the humanity of it, the nature of Baja and the landscape, as well as the motorcycle and the mechanics in the machine. So it's kind of like three elements to the story that we constantly kept on coming back to, and I think that's ultimately what the film has at its heart, is man, machine, and nature.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think to touch back on that idea of showcasing the race in a way that hadn't been before. Like even when it comes down to the crew that we picked, Forrest and I chatting, we brought on Lincoln and Andrew Goff as the DP. Both as two guys who don't ride motorcycles, aren't within that world, but are in, create beautiful cinema on their own, and want to take and tell human stories every day in, day out, and wanted to take that approach and bring a fresh perspective to the motorcycle world.
Yes. I want to get into that. Before I ask my question, I just want to tell everyone that's watching, if you have a comment, you've seen the movie, either in the theater or now online, or if you have a question for the team, please type it into the chat box wherever you're watching, Facebook, YouTube, or on our virtual festival platform, and we'll pop the question up on screen for our panel to acknowledge. Thank you. Okay, so yeah, that's one of the things that I thought about, Harry, is when I was watching this. Obviously, this is the 5th year that we're running the film festival. I've seen a lot of motorcycle films over the course of those 5 years. And one of the things that really jumped out at me is how well there is this mesh of machine and landscape and human stories, and how beautifully it's told. And you obviously, it seems to me, must have put a lot of pre-thought, a lot of planning into the production of this film, because it seems to me you didn't take any cut any corners. I mean, we know you've hired a helicopter, obviously, which you don't see in many independent films. Like I said before, the coloring on it, the editing, the music, everything was woven together so well to tell this compelling story. Talk to us a little bit about, this is for any one of you, about that pre-planning that went into this, and why you chose to go to this extreme in order to tell these stories, as opposed to just, we're going to follow around Forrest and Colton and Derek, and let's see what happens, and then we'll take the videos and we'll splice it together and come up with a story. Like, it wasn't just that. This was very intentionally told in the way that you did.
Yeah, I mean, like Lincoln said, there was upwards of 9 months of pre-production, and I was in California with Forrest, and Lincoln and Andy were both in Sydney, and chatting every week, sending each other references and story references, almost all exclusively outside of the motorcycle world as well, which was something that I was really into. Is that we were taking, again, like I said before, that approach that was atypical to the other motorcycle films that we were seeing, and trying to bring that into the motorcycle world. And I think having someone like Forrest as well on board in the team, who is obviously can legitimize that as well. I think it was important to have that balance across the crew. Is although Lincoln and Andy weren't from the motorcycle world, they were from the film world and telling human stories. We had Forrest on the other side, who was very entrenched in core motorcycle culture, and where we were able to meet in the middle was hopefully to create a piece that was enjoyable by somebody who's ridden motorcycles all their life, and just as enjoyable by someone who has never even thought about riding a motorcycle, and that was always the intention from day dot. And in terms of cutting corners, there were a lot of corners cut for sure. It was it's interesting, all of which are not seen in the film. It was again a testament to the crew. It was it was a labor of love for everyone. We all pushed so far above and beyond, and chose group decisions, chose where we'd be allocating this money, and where what's going to be most beneficial for the film, and rather than ourselves. And we slept in bunk beds in random places throughout Baja and ate street tacos for dinner and then the next day had a helicopter kind of thing. So it was a really funny distribution of the funds, but it was something that we all were, it was all for the better of the film, really, rather than our own comfort or anything like that. And
Yeah.
I think.
Well, I'm glad you didn't cut corners, or at least we certainly didn't notice it. And I'm glad you pushed it on so many fronts. I'm going to come back to the helicopter story because I know there's an interesting tale there. Forrest, what were you hoping to get out of this movie? Or like, what were you hoping to see in it? What were you hoping that it would convey?
Yeah, I think I would have to sort of back up what Harrison was saying. For both he and I, it was we had the strong desire to, he and I had both. I think the whole crew had been a part of various films that were, that sort of dabbled in travel adventure, a lot of surfing, some motorcycle stuff. And a lot of those films in the past, they were fun projects where we were really kind of roughing it, if you will, and but again, through those like hardships and putting ourselves in these places that aren't always the easiest to get to, and having to wake up, before the crack of dawn and travel thousands of miles, etc. Through that, you tend to get this beautiful imagery. And so, that was something we really wanted to capture with Baja. And it's such a beautiful place that everywhere you point the camera is quite beautiful. And I think for me, looking at my biggest inspiration has always been in motorcycling and in filmmaking has always been Bruce Brown. And what I really wanted to get out of The Desert Said Dance was to try and create a film, as Harrison said, that transcended the core motorcycle culture, and also hopefully speaks to the wider public or audience. And through that, through creating something beautiful and telling human stories about this team that I was a part of, and how we all have our own unique struggles, just like any other person. And we go and put it all on the line to race our motorcycles and kind of show people what that's like. And I know it's not for everybody, but it's kind of a window into why we do it, and it's sort of told in a beautiful way and through beautiful cinematography. So that was really my goal and what I wanted to see, and I think we all were kind of on the same page there with the crew, and it ended up being the perfect recipe for what we were able to create. And like you said, like Harrison said, with cutting corners, that's where we all sacrificed, because we knew if we shared beds and ate tacos, we would be able to afford the helicopter, and it'd be all worth it in the end.
You mentioned that the film may not be for everyone. Well, I can tell you that one of our sponsors brought with them a number of his clients who were not motorcyclists, and they enjoyed the movie. This isn't. I don't think you have to be a biker to enjoy it. You definitely don't.
That's music to our ears, because that was such a that was one of our, I think, biggest goals with it, was to transcend the just motorcycle enthusiasts.
Yeah. So. No, I mean, it's a story of overcoming, and it's a story of a group of people coming together, and the challenges that's ahead of them. So that's a universal story that applies to everyone. We had a comment from The Walk, or The Twalk. Legends, such an incredible film. Is this somebody that you guys know?
Yeah. That's
okay, great.
That's Thomas Walk. Shout out Thomas Walk, legend and incredible photographer.
Thanks for that comment. Lawrence, let me ask you. Would love to hear some feedback. I know you pre-screened the film. I shared with our audience today online your review of it. Tell us a little bit about what you thought of this movie. And just to remind everyone, Lawrence has raced the Baja 1000 before, amongst other things. So give us your take on it.
Well, yeah. First of all, I don't want to gush, and also I'm an easy sell because I'm the perfect guy to really enjoy this movie. And you read my comments. They're very sincere. What I think is really interesting is the way it's done and the dialogue that the characters in the movie say basically are relatable for anybody, not just a motorcycle person or a racer or something. I thought that was really well done. I have technical questions like how many cameras and how many helicopters and what was all the behind the scenes stuff, because I'm inquisitive that way. I like to know how you guys accomplished this. Such a great movie, and if you read the credits, there aren't that many people on the list of people who actually worked on the movie. So either that's representative of a huge amount of work for a very few number of people, or maybe there's something you can let us in on as far as how you accomplished the movie, because it really is a spectacular movie. I can only imagine what it would cost to do that movie. Obviously, very, very talented, dedicated people. So that's kind of my question and a little bit of a statement.
I love that question. I want to know too. I'm a gear guy. Tell us about everything.
Thanks so much again for the kind words on that review again, Lawrence. It's
sincere.
Super nice.
Yeah, I'm super.
I mean, I can answer from the crew and equipment point. I don't know what. Yeah, but. I mean, for the most part, the core crew. Oh God, it's gonna be bad if I forget someone's name. But for the most part, it was a small group of us. It was Andrew Goff, who's this cinematographer, DOP, Sandy McLennan, who was AC, Forrest, Harry, myself, and we had two other photographers.
Joe
who came on later. Joe Carlino, who came on a little bit later, but was there for the majority and definitely some of the more. He was a kind of the action cinematographer, the camera. But for the most part, that was the small team, and we shot on. Joe had his Red camera, and we had a Sony Venice for the tech nerds out there, and that's kind of how we shot the majority of it. When it came to the race itself, obviously it expanded slightly there, but it was still a pretty small team. I could be wrong again, but I'm pretty sure we had 3 camera teams and then the helicopter, which was 4.
Yeah,
it was 3, including the 3 and us. So
yeah.
It's
if I can add, I just think that what was accomplished and obviously the quality of it is very good. Was there a script? Is one of my questions, because each of the individual characters in the movie, especially Forrest, what they were saying was really well done. I mean, they're obviously very honest statements. I've been there a little bit, so I kind of can relate to that. But I think for the general public, what they were saying and how it was edited, it was obviously sound bites that were, I guess, parts of conversations that you chose to put in the movie. But I think that how that was done with the different characters and what they were saying was really, really kind of shed a lot of light into who these types of people are and what they were going through, and their emotions and nervousness, and that's why I said it was like a bit of a roller coaster of emotions, and the way the music was applied to that really enhanced that, I think. But was it scripted at all? Were guys saying, hey, maybe you want to go that direction in your conversation or something?
No. So I guess at the beginning in the pre-production, we talked a lot about the film and the essence of it, and I put together a pretty extensive treatment, just a 40-odd page document, kind of outlining what the essence of the film was. Within that, we didn't really write a script. It was more the look and feel and story routes and things. I guess Well, and so with the story route again coming to man, nature, and machine, so we just try to make sure that all the questions we ask are kind of geared around that and emotions and feelings, and things that people could, as Harry said, Andy and I aren't really sort of from a heavily motorcycle background, so I would ask questions that that I could understand, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it was so technical that I wasn't understanding it. So I'd make sure that everyone got back to a basic human emotion or a basic explanation so that everyone could understand it later on down the track when we're in the edit. But no, there was no script. It very much being aware of the story at every single hour of every single day. For example, it rained before the Baja 1000 and we didn't know that's going to happen, and it plays a significant role in the story. So when something like that happens, we have to go out and be ready to shoot B-roll of rains and rain, and then interview people about the rain, and constantly think about the story and what things are impacting us and what we'll need later on when we're in the edit. So that's kind of how we approached it in that regard, I think.
Yeah, we really wanted to take an approach, like I know that something that we talked about in the pre-production for ages was the idea of having no narrator and having the characters narrate their own story. And I think without having a script, and I think, like, you know, it's a testament to Lincoln's direction in the fact that he was able to ask the right questions and draw the right answers out of the characters, that they're able to tell their own story from start to finish without any need for an overarching narration that sort of tells what's going on. Everyone sort of tells their own story without realizing they're doing that. And, you know, that's another thing that, you know, Lincoln sort of said, you know, thinking about the story 24/7. Like, we shot for upwards of over 60 days. We shot almost every sunrise, almost every sunset, and to be thinking about the story at every which moment that whole entire time is no easy feat. So definitely a credit to Lincoln on that front.
Yeah, just another quick shout out also to the writers and Forrest for being actually really amazing on camera. I did pre-interviews with everyone before we went into it, so I kind of knew everyone could speak, but they, you know, Forrest having a lot of background with films and media, it helped a lot. And also in the pre-production, so he understood what I was going for when we needed certain questions answered as well.
Yeah. Just going to pop a comment here from Blair. This is quite beautiful. So Blair Scarlett says, having seen almost every movie from all 5 years of the Toronto Motorcycle Film Festival, this had the highest production value of all the films. Great cinematic experience. Thank you, Blair, for that.
Thanks, Blair. High accolades.
Yes, indeed. And another comment here, Project Team Building says, awesome film, guys. You writers are insane in the best way possible. LOL. Well, I think Forrest and Lawrence can probably talk about the difficulty and the dangers of racing the Baja. But I'm just going to mention one part of the movie that I really loved. I don't remember where it was in Baja or who the rider was. I think it was you, Forrest, but I'm going to say you weren't even riding. You were like skimming across the surface, as almost like you were surfing the sand with your bike. Like it was barely touching the ground, mostly in the air, going over these like humps, and you were just flying and coasting across that. And it was beautiful to watch. But it made me think about, you know, that saying about how you need to have at least 10,000 hours of something before you can call yourself a master. And I realized that you probably have more than 10,000 hours of riding underneath you. And to be able to ride at that velocity over that type of a terrain where your body senses and feels everything, what's coming up and what the bike is doing underneath you, and you're automatically, without even thinking about it, your body is reacting and adjusting its balance and so on. It really is incredible. The skill level required, I cannot imagine. So it was beautiful to see. I wonder if you know the scene I'm talking about.
I'm not sure which one you're
I
talking
think
about.
it might actually be Derek's section in San Felipe, like
Oh,
when
okay.
we're tracking him from the car, perhaps.
I can say though that every one of us in the film experienced that sensation, multiple times throughout the race or even pre-running, and it's one of those things that's part of the attraction and allure, and to some extent it becomes almost like an addiction to go down there and ride and race. And it's for those moments when you really feel in tune and you sort of just get lost in the moment, or in the act of doing. It becomes this instinctual thing. And yeah, that's what you described is essentially what the reason that we all do it, I would say. And obviously going out and winning when that does happen, because it's not often, or not as often as one would like, it makes it even that much more special. But I think one thing I wanted to say before, in terms of looking at it from the racer's perspective, and Lawrence, I'm sure he can relate to this, and all the emotions that you go through in a 1,000-mile race, the highs and lows, and the sacrifices you make and the decisions you make, that all happen in a split second, where just like you were saying about reading terrain and just acting instinctually. And I think at some point, when we got into the race, the film crew didn't expect it to be as possibly challenging as it actually was, and it became as challenging for the film crew as it was for the racers themselves. And I think you could have made a film just following the actual film crew and all the challenges and just the whole adventure that they went through, just chasing the actual race. And for me, being on both sides of that was really challenging, but super rewarding at the end. And so yeah, I really got a hats off to those guys for not sleeping for days on end and chasing us around the desert.
Lawrence alluded to this in his review, where he mentioned about the incredibly high level of skill of the riders in the film and the dangers of Baja 1000. I'm going to open this up to either of you if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's arguably one of the most dangerous off-road races in the world. It's the longest point-to-point nonstop race on the planet. And there's so many factors that come into play there. With the race course is essentially not closed off to spectators. Oftentimes, you're racing on someone's driveway or how they commute to and from work or whatever the case may be. And most often they don't even know a race is going on at all. And so you'll be coming around a corner and, there'll be a rancher and he's just going about his day and he's parked his truck sideways on a race course while you're going 100 miles an hour and there's not much you can do. So those type of things, along with the constant deterioration of the race course from all the vehicles that are racing on it and pre-running on it, and it goes from day one when pre-running opens to race day, it's not even the same thing, and it just it becomes this. It's really a survival from start to finish, and so like I said before, the range of emotions that you experience in those 2 weeks or 3 weeks that you're down there pre-running and riding and ultimately racing, it goes from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows and everything in between. And 1 minute you're crying, the next minute you're screaming with joy. But that you can never plan for what you're going to expect. But that's, again, like I said before, that's part of what keeps us coming back. That's what part of the allure is. It's the ultimate adventure, and you live more in one day of racing down there than some people do in a lifetime, for sure.
Lawrence, anything you want to add to that?
Well, yeah, it definitely is dangerous down there, and it's basically what Forrest said. It's because you can't control everything. It's basically the Wild West. It's one of the few places on the planet where you can ride your motocross bike down Main Street and do a wheelie and wave at the police at the same time. And there's 800 horsepower trophy trucks coming up behind you in some cases. At double the speed that I would have ever considered going, and that's where it's also very compromising. And I don't really like to talk too much about the danger side. I mean, we all accept that. If you get into it, you know what you're doing. You've made that bargain, but you have to accept that Baja is completely. The only thing you can count on is that it's unpredictable, and you just can't factor out enough risk out of the equation to make it safe, let's call it. Not like an event around here where everybody's going in the same direction on trails or track or something like that. So it's an experience, like Forrest says. You live a lifetime just in 24 hours, 30 hours in that race, and when it's over, if you get to the finish line first, it's a huge accomplishment. As you see in the movie, the work that you put in to just get to the finish line, let alone win, unbelievable. And it's a massive commitment. And then to add a movie around that whole thing, it's almost surreal as far as the amount of work and energy and time and money that you require to produce that movie. That you can, I don't know what you're charging, Kai. It's $9 to watch it. It's the bargain of a lifetime, the way I can see it. I don't know. Compared to what you get, like you see these guys. I don't even want to ask how you guys financed it or anything like that. Must be sponsors, Deus or something like that.
I mean, in terms of the financing thing, I think it's a lot. We won't go into too much detail, but it's a lot less than maybe what you would think. Again, to the huge effort of the crew and their passion for just kind of being there for us and coming over, coming over and spending 90 days of their time with little rest just to make it all happen. But over to the boys if they want to talk more about that.
I mean, before, during, and after, I don't think there's anybody that worked on a normal rate. Everyone was helping out and calling favors and everything. So yeah, it costs a lot, but definitely a lot less than I'm sure you'd be expecting.
Yeah.
I was going to say that there was I mean, I felt for Forrest a couple of days out of the race because he'd very much been executive producing the film the entire time, and it came to a point where it was just like, all right, I gotta race this very dangerous race.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a step back, and I had utmost respect for that. He's just got to concentrate. So yeah, credit to him for wearing two hats for that entire time as well.
I want to ask you, Lincoln. Forrest mentioned about the highs and the lows, and it changed a little bit in the film. So there was that moment when the motor gave out on Derek, and the team went from being fighting for a podium finish. They were second at that point in time, and hours were lost until the engine was put back together again so the team could take off. And then the drive changed a little bit, right? It went from fighting for a podium position to fighting to finish. And we sort of felt that, like there was a change in the team dynamics, and almost like they were more relaxed at this point. It wasn't so, driven forward. They were still racing. They were going all out, but it was a change. How do you handle that, like from a directorial debut? Because that's a big shift in direction.
I think I mean, early on we talked about in what direction this film could go. If there was a casualty or if someone hurt themselves, and how that would play into it. And so I had talked to, and us as a crew had talked to everyone about being prepared to film no matter what, and making sure that everyone was on board with that, and also making sure that we were ready to capture the story at any one point. We put people around all of Baja to make sure that we had the best opportunity to interview people when they were switched riders, and let the helicopter kind of chase the action. So we very much focused on the human side of it. When the motorcycle broke down, as you mentioned, don't want to ruin too much for people who haven't seen the film, so spoiler alerts. But when that happened, the A crew were with Forrest in Ensenada, and it was a pretty difficult moment. Like the whole team were kind of, obviously the riders, but there's a lot of people that help out on an endeavor like this, and not just the film crew. It's obviously all the pits and the people, friends and family that are there. And it was a pretty down moment. But interestingly, for me, one of the less, like, all empathy was still there, but less stressful for me, because I kind of knew that this would play into the story in a very, very big way. And so it very quickly became Harrison and myself trying to organize a crew to get to where they were very quickly, so we could to continue filming and make sure we captured everything we possibly could of this pretty momentous moment. I think it was pretty clear that for me where we needed to be and what the story was from then on out. That said, it was credit to the writers and Derek and Nick and everyone who had to, and Colton and everyone who has to ride after the event, because their mentality did shift. That was nothing on us telling them what to do or anything like that. That was just the mentality they chose, and the whole team chose, and we were just there to capture it. And for me, it makes it a lot more relatable story for anyone trying to do anything in their life. It doesn't necessarily need to be a race. It's just, you just got to do your best with it. And if anyone tells you otherwise, don't believe it and just go for it. And I think that's the biggest. I mean, a lot of people love that draw away from the film, so that's kind of how we dealt with it. Ooh.
Can't hear you.
Mute here.
You're muted.
There we go. Sorry, I was muted.
Yeah.
Thank you. It was a good thing that the helicopter was there, obviously, not just to capture the footage during the race, but also to assist at that time.
Yeah, it was pretty gnarly having the A team over the other side of the peninsula, and then having the bike break down in a spot that wasn't very close to any of the crews or anything like that.
Yeah.
So it was a pretty stressful moment. And we ended up I got the helicopter to come and pick myself up and our B unit DP and drop us in straight into the action, and document it there. But yeah, it was pretty stressful.
Yeah.
I can imagine.
Myself on satellite comms talking to Harry about asking him what questions to ask and things on the ground over there, because he essentially became the second unit director at that point, as I wasn't there. But the helicopter, I mean, I don't know if you guys want to talk more about that at one point, but it was definitely very much there for filming purposes, but its primarily function was for the safety of the riders, which Forrest and Harry can talk about more so. And you need it to have a fighting chance at the Baja 1000, really.
Yeah, I mean, essentially all of anyone who's going out and winning at the elite level in Baja, essentially you have a helicopter that serves as not only medical support in the event that there is an accident, but also it serves as a spotter. And so generally the rider on the motorcycle has communication with the helicopter, and in the helicopter there is a spotter / EMT who is sort of warning you of any danger that may lie ahead in the course, and that really gives the rider confidence to hang it all out and go as fast as he can, and knowing that there isn't a cow spectator or something in the court, some immediate danger.
Yeah, thanks for
However-
mentioning that, because a bunch of us were wondering about that during the intermission. We were talking about the film and the helicopter scenes, and we were wondering, like, yes, of course you had it there for filming, but wondering if you used it as a way to spot what's coming up ahead, and of course for case of emergency. So yeah, you confirmed that. Thank you.
If
It's
you're
also the primary purpose of it, more so than filming. And like the safety of our riders comes
Right.
before filming as well. And Forrest can sort of say any team that wants to be competitive in going for the win, they all have their own spotter helicopter also.
Harry, sorry, go ahead, finish up.
Oh, I was just going to say what I wanted to add to that was when I lined up that morning to start the race at 3 a.m. or whatever the time was, our communications were failing. So the helicopter wouldn't actually be in the air till sunrise per Mexican law. And from the moment I started the race till the moment we finished, the race bike never had communication with helicopter. So that added a whole other element to the race from the racer's perspective. We're sort of going in blind, and for a lot of guys, that can really throw off your race when you're not having that sort of safety net there. So that's something I want to add in.
Absolutely. Adds to the scariness of the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Harry, you and I, when we exchanged emails, you shared with me an interesting story about the helicopter, which I shared out. But for those people that haven't seen it, tell us about what happened with the helicopter and how you almost didn't have one.
Yeah. So I mean, we started, like I said before, the primary focus for the helicopter is having a spotter. So we had a helicopter lined up that had experience flying as a spotter for other races and whatnot, and then it teed up to get the shot over gimbal attached to that. About a week out from the race, we found out there was a miscommunication between the shot over techs and the pilot in which helicopter the pilot actually had, and worked out that the gimbal wouldn't fit to that helicopter. So there's a very small list of people that are willing to fly their helicopters in Mexico first and foremost, and then an even smaller amount that are willing to spend 24 hours or a bit less chasing motorcycle riders through the desert. There's dust and it's very dangerous, difficult locations to refuel, and so there's definitely a very small list of people even willing to get down there and help you out to begin with. Let alone 1 week from the race, where each one of those is contracted already to a different race team. So they kind of left us in a pretty interesting position a week out from the race, not having any helicopter. And although we had about 4 camera teams that each was stationed throughout the loop of the race, there's so much ground that you wouldn't be able to cover, and to really properly document the race, there's no real other way of doing it other than having that helicopter. So it was a pretty stressful week leading up to the race, trying to source a replacement. And there was one point where the most viable option was looking like putting a helicopter on a semi-trailer from New York and driving it into Mexico that way, which was a pretty scary thought at the time, having to do that. But Eric Everly from and the team at Tempt Media, who we'd used for a helicopter day prior, they helped out immensely, and we're actually and as well as JP, our shot over operator and tech, like everyone pulled together, and we ended up with a helicopter pilot, Craig Hosking, who had has a huge resume of Hollywood films, and he ended up being our pilot, and we had an incredible helicopter. And it all came together in the end, and actually was one of the best sort of things that could have happened if you, now that I can say that now that we're past it, but at the time it was definitely one of the worst sort of things. So it's funny how that, at the time it was like, oh, this is, an immense low of the film, but looking back on it, it's probably one of the biggest highs. The footage that came out, I mean, for anyone that's seen it, they already know that the footage that came from the race is incredible. It's a testament to the operating of JP on the camera and of Craig flying. Like there's scenes where they're following motorcycle riders up a mountain and they're lower than the motorcycle rider and weaving between trees and like, the skill on the behalf of the pilot alone is incredible. Like, yeah, I mean, and then I guess another helicopter thing, that like Lincoln mentioned before, we had a 24-hour delay from the rain, so that was another awesome thing to count for, having the helicopter an extra day in Mexico as well, because those helicopters are quite expensive.
I bet. It worked out like you said, but I am sure you could have done without that stress. I can't imagine something as big as that hitting you 1 week before you're due to start. It's definitely a lot of pressure.
Stressful. I think that might have been one of the points where Forrest was like, all right, I'm tapping out as a producer. I'm going back to a motorcycle rider now. You guys deal with that. It was pretty fun looking back on it now. But I mean, it was an awesome job, like working with Eric and the guys at Tempt to sort of like working out the production of it. And we stationed our helicopter at the highest point in Baja, so that as Forrest said, Mexican law deems that you can't fly before or after hours of the sun. So being on the highest peak in Baja meant that they'd had the earliest sunrise. It means that our helicopter was the first helicopter in the air. And even like our refueling plan as well. We had a few guys that helped smuggle over some fuel over the border in the back of their trucks, and we stationed them at different spots, different predetermined spots in the desert where the helicopter would land in a nice sort of flat patch in the desert, refuel and keep going, and then that same truck would go and bunny hop the cut off part of the track and try and overtake them and be ready for the next time that they'd refuel. And
amazing.
Thing for the camera teams as well. Like we had 4 separate camera teams, but it's a 1,000-mile loop. It's pretty hard to cover, and not only that is that the guys riding, they're riding upwards of 100 miles an hour almost the whole time.
Wow.
So trying to overtake them is definitely an interesting thing in itself as well. But planned out the route for everyone so that they could take highways and cut parts of the course and overtake them and set up. And the logistics of the race day were definitely
incredible. Forrest, I have a couple of questions for you. First one is from Ken. Forrest, how were you able to separate yourself from the role of filmmaker while you were racing? Must have been a tremendous amount of mental fortitude.
Yeah, thanks, Ken, for the question. That was one of the biggest challenges for me, wearing both those hats. I think ultimately what it came down to, and I think any racer can sort of attest to this, but once you put the helmet on and you get on the bike, you have to have a singular focus, and that is what's directly in front of you. And otherwise, you're going to end up on the ground and hurt or worse. So I think at some point you kind of have to just shut your brain off and just sort of focus on the task at hand. And it was not easy, and there was times where I wasn't always able to switch it off, to be perfectly honest. But like as Lincoln said before, leading up to just a few days before the race, I kind of made an announcement to everyone on the team that, hey, I'm checking out and it's time to go racing. And I had to make that decision to do that. And I think afterwards it took me probably a week to recover from just not only the physical exertion of the whole racing, but I think just the mental sort of stress and everything that went into it. It took us, I think all of us, a little while to wind down from the whole thing. It was probably one of the biggest sort of endeavors I've ever taken on. And it was a lot of great learning experience for sure.
Yeah, I can back that up. After the race, I think there was a 2-week window, and then I had a trip that I went to Namibia for. But that 2 weeks after the race is black in my memory. I have nothing. It's just recovery from the most intense two months of our lives, I think.
Wow.
And we finished the race, and Derek was so tired and destroyed from like just the sheer exhaustion of it that he drove back to Santa Barbara, and we weren't able to interview him then the following day where we interviewed everyone else, and we were kind of all like, we're done, all good. And then I had to kind of break it. I was like, I think we got to go to Santa Barbara. So we had to drive from Baja back up to Santa Barbara after having done the race a couple of days earlier and get that final interview, which is really key in the film, and I'm so glad we did it. But that was that extra little bit of energy we needed, just a bit like, we're
Right.
going again. Film's
Right.
not done.
That's right. Next question for you, Forrest, is how did it feel to pass the bike over to your teammate after your leg of the race? Were you relieved to be off, anxious for how it will go from there, wishing you could ride longer? What was that moment like? Thanks, Kat, for that question.
Yeah, I think in this particular scenario, it was quite the relief. Colton, who's my teammate, he's also been a mentor of mine, and he's a 5-time Baja champion. So, really, we all followed his lead when it came to this race, and he also had very high expectations for all of us, including himself, to go out and perform, at the highest level. So for me, I think it was it was very challenging. I did about 225-ish miles nonstop, which was nearly 7 hours on the motorcycle racing. And because of the weather event, essentially the whole course was wet, and the weather was just about freezing. So anyone who's endured 6-7 hours of being soaking wet head to toe in freezing weather conditions will tell you that it's not very fun. But I think there was a few moments before that, though, where I had this realization that I had sort of reached this lifelong goal of just going out and racing the Baja 1000. And I'll never forget the moment when I came over this crest and I reached the coastline, and the sun happened to be rising, and I saw the helicopter flying overhead, and that was the moment when it all came together, and my dad was spectating just off the side of the course, and that was a pretty emotional moment for me, where I had these sort of tears of joy, and that was a really surreal moment that I'll never forget. But I have to say, when I was that last 50 miles or so, I couldn't get off that bike fast enough, and so passing over to Colton was a sweet moment for me, and I knew from then on out it was in good hands.
Thank you. I want to talk a little bit briefly about what's coming up next for the film, but I've just got one more question, which is from Alexander Crony. He wants to know, will you be going back to Baja and go for a win?
I think I can sort of, as of just this past weekend, the team itself, we're not all there together this year, but Derek and Colton have just won the Baja 400, which kind of serves as a qualifier for the upcoming Baja 1000 here in November. And the teams, that's the goal. And we don't know exactly what the team will look like for the Baja 1000, but it sounds like Derek and Colton are going to try and take it on as a 2-man team, and they really want to back up their win at the 400. So that's absolutely the goal. And if we're not there, I know we'll all be rooting for them from here, from home. So
that's amazing. Congratulations to them for taking that win.
Yeah.
Lincoln, what's next for the film? So it's screened at our festival. What are the plans for it? You go into other festivals, and what happens beyond that?
We're in the middle of every week at the moment. We're working towards a release strategy for the film. Look out for dates in California coming up very soon, towards the end of October, I believe. I don't know if I'm allowed to say any of that. Hopefully it is all locking in, but that's the plan. So we'll be doing releases around America, and then Australia starts opening up. We're currently in lockdown for people who don't know, but we start opening up at the end of October. So throughout summer, we'll be starting to have cinema screenings here. Deus Ex Machina, the brand, has also come on board to help us in other locations around the world to screen it and have showings in all their different locations, so Tokyo and France, Africa, Indonesia. So it'll have a pretty worldwide release, and then sometime early next year we'll get it up online for streaming. So if you're very lucky, the people of Canada, to be able to see it streaming before anyone else. So if you're interested in going check out the film, check it out on the Toronto Motorcycle Film website. But yeah, that's the plan. I don't know. Did I miss anything, Harry, Forrest? I think that's what. But we're excited, and it's all slowly coming together. The website will be launching this week, and we've got our first poster done by Barlow Agency, which is amazing, and we're excited to start promoting it and start getting it out there and having people like yourselves watch it. So all exciting.
Well, I really appreciate you and the team giving us the opportunity to show it here in Toronto and online to our audience across Canada. It is a real treat. If somebody that's watching this hasn't seen the movie yet, you have to do yourself a favor. You have to see this movie. It is absolutely fantastic. As we were mentioning, production value is super high. The story is very great, very compelling, and it's a beautiful watch, regardless whether you're a motorcyclist or not. Lawrence, any closing comments or thoughts before we wrap it up?
No, I think it's great information about the insight, what it took to produce a movie, and it's interesting. I have a few questions, maybe off, and it's no longer live, but I'd like to know the connection to Deus, to Forrest.
Yes.
Yeah, you said my connection to Deus.
Yeah, how does that factor into the movie?
Yeah, so I've been involved with the brand since 2015 as a team rider.
Oh yeah.
And that's actually how Harry and I met. Harrison at the time was a staff photographer for Deus, and we got the opportunity to travel around the world together and shoot photos and make films for the brand. And so, being a sponsor of mine and my racing and all that, and Harry's involvement with the brand as well, it was an obvious choice to bring them on board and get the rest of the team in Deus gear. And they're obviously kind enough to help support this film and let Harry and I go out and take the time to go do this. And so yeah, it's I'm still with the brand today, and as with Harry, so that's sort of our connection.
I mean, one of my first jobs was also working for Deus in Sydney in the early stages. So good friends and good relationships through that too.
That's actually how most of the crew met. At least how I met them. Lincoln and Andy, the DP. We had all worked together on other Deus projects. So that relationship existed really because of the brand. So.
I'm assuming that Deus funded the production of the film to some capacity?
No.
Oh, really? Oh, that's surprising. I was just going to say thank you to them, but oh, wow. Okay.
Amazing support. but maybe not financially.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, lots of support, but not of the financial kind.
Here's another question. Are you hoping to make money? Are you going to pay yourselves a salary to do? I know it's going to be $3 an hour if it is, but there's some
question.
financial gain here.
Look, it ultimately it was none of our intentions to go into this
No.
film making money, and you know we're the distribution company now, and we are going through sales of the film and going through that process, and ultimately the goal is to recoup the investment first and foremost, and have that be returned, and then following that, all the majority of the crew have a profit share percentage in the film as well. So you know when once the investment is paid back, we're all gonna slowly reap the rewards. How big those are, I don't know, and I don't. It never has been any of our sort of motivations. But I mean, we all do have a share in the profits following the investment recoupment.
Do you think it'll be on, say, Vimeo or a platform like that in the future? Or?
Yeah, so the plan that the distribution company is putting in place first is to go through the theatrical releases first, then they'll do like the streaming and broadcast, try and get a streaming and broadcast sale, and then following that it'll be like a streaming on demand sort of thing where it's like Vimeo or Amazon or iTunes where you purchase to view. But that's all a long process getting to those sort of things. And
Yeah.
so, make sure that we do the film film festival first, and the theatrical screenings, and the streaming and everything like that. It's a long process, but it shouldn't be too long before people can start seeing the film, particularly with these theatrical releases beginning in the end of October.
Oh, great.
Making the film was a huge learning curve for everyone, and then the distribution of it is also almost the same thing again. It's a huge job that we're involved in almost daily as well. So. Yeah,
I'm assuming that the distribution company is approaching this way beyond the motorcycle niche film festivals, right? And applying to submitting it to other film festivals as well.
Yeah, they're at the moment they're just working on direct sales at the moment.
Yeah. Okay.
Being beyond the film festival stuff, but
yeah.
In terms of film festivals, we didn't
huge learning curve. I mean, Forrest and I started conception on this film March 2019, and now here we are in mid-September 2021. It's been a long process from then to now, and it's still going.
Oh yes. You were telling me that you didn't go into this with the idea of making money, and it's very difficult to make money in this industry, as you know. And but I think you've got obviously the right approach, and the intent is really good, and the intent matters so much. And I wish you much success with the film. I do hope you do quite well with it, and more than recoup the investment that was put into it.
I think we all hope to do just another project would be
on to the next one.
It'd be amazing if we got the opportunity to do something again.
Right. Well, on that note, I thank you again, Forrest, Harry, Lincoln, and Lawrence. Thank you for joining me on this Q&A discussion. It was insightful, and I really enjoyed it. Thank you all.
Thank you.
And thank you to our TMFF audience for watching the film and submitting your questions. Very much appreciated. Bye, everybody.